Another morning, another long day ahead of us with a difficult topic. But today the weather isn't very good. It's going to be very windy, which is great for the topic ahead of us. But first, something a bit different, something a bit lighter.
King Minos, the Minotaur and the Labyrinth. Those would be for many people the first associations when it comes to Crete, and rightly so. It is the home of the Minoan culture, and in the future there are going to be a couple of very interesting places that we're going to visit. But of course, there are plenty of smaller places as well, and here is a late Minoan Tholos tomb. Although it is not exactly the most impressive place, I like to come to even such small little spots. But now, time for something completely different.
The heavy topic for today, Second World War, Battle of Crete. We are going to start it with cemetery. German war cemetery. So here's the interesting topic. How do you prepare a cemetery of fallen soldiers of the aggressor? How do you, for example, choose the wording of commemorative plaques? So here we are going to have a little controversy. Now here is a plaque saying that such and such number of German soldiers rest here who died in the Battle of Crete and the occupation, blah blah. Now the third line from the bottom is the interesting one, because it says that they gave their life for their home country, for motherland. That's nice. But giving your life for motherland is when you are invaded, not when you are the invader. So obviously there's a controversy, and here you've got it in English described. So you can just pause, you can just read it. Well, it basically tells you that it's from 2002, the plaque, and it's controversial, blah blah. Something missing. There is no translation of the plaque, of the bronze plaque itself. So it tells you about controversy, but it doesn't tell you what the controversy is exactly about. So it is curious that they tell you about the issue without translating the line that's causing trouble. But here, something better prepared as a little exhibition with photos from the invasion, yes, but the topic is mostly here exactly how do you commemorate after the war, especially those who were the aggressors. Now, I'm not going to go into details here, although it is an interesting little exhibition. I would like to show you one person, this nice gentleman here. About him, a couple of words. The nice little gentleman that you saw was no other than Kurt Student. He was during the First World War one of the ace pilots of Germany, disillusioned of course after the war that Germany lost. Just like Goering, for example, when Hitler claims power, he uses his idea. Well, Hitler had the idea that infantry is creation of Prussia. The naval units were the creation of Bismarck, so-called Second Reich. So he wanted another thing, he wanted air power. And Student used this Hitler's idea to convince him to create a special unit, the paratrooper unit. And that's what he got. It was his kind of an obsession, we could say. They were actually not used in the invasion of Poland. Hitler saw no reason. So they are used in Netherlands, Belgium and Norway, but they were always kind of on the margin. So when it comes to taking over Crete, Student convinces Hitler it should be the work of the Luftwaffe, of the airborne brigades. So, in other words, it should be taken over by his elite Fallschirmjäger, so hunters with parachutes. Now, who were those soldiers actually? Because, well, I don't know about you, but when I think elite soldiers, thanks to Hollywood, I'm thinking Van Damme, Stallone, and all those big guys and everything. Well, those here were not big guys. Maybe they were big, but they were definitely not old. They were 18, 20, 20 something. People already raised by National Socialism, very often after Hitlerjugend. So they were completely brainwashed. They believed absolutely that they are not simply elite of the army, that they are the elite of the world. So when they came here, invading Crete, they were not invading anything. They were indeed defending the motherland, because the Third Reich is all. Everything belongs to them. They have the right to claim everything. They felt completely invincible because of that. But also they felt invincible because they were 20 something. People at that age feel simply invincible. Now let me tell you this, they were very, very much invincible, and here they all are. Now if we start entering those little alleys, we would see something like this. Born 1919, dead 41. Born 1917, dead 41. Born 1920, dead 42. Those elite paratroopers were very, very much invincible. Of course, a question may be asked, if they were such an elite, how come they were dying like flies? Well, first of all, their first actions, it was a secret. Secondly, they were operating behind enemy lines, and also they would very often say that jumping off a plane to suddenly fall on the heads of their enemies, it was a great feeling. Well, the issue is, here it was no secret. One of the negatives, I guess, of feeling of superiority is that you don't really care about keeping secrets. So actually, the Allied soldiers here, they knew there is going to be an attack from the air. I mean, attack by the paratroopers. So that's one thing. Secondly, they were not falling behind enemy lines. They were falling right in front of the Allied soldiers. So then you're not really jumping on the head of your enemies like a hero. You're in a shooting gallery. You're a metaphorical duck, and that's exactly how it went down. Most of the people that you see buried here, they died the first 2 days of the invasion. They died like ducks. Of course, there were planes that simply crashed, but that's calculated risk. But many of them did not even touch the ground alive. They were being shot at while in the air. In the end, of course, propaganda would say this is a great victory and so on and so forth, because in the end Crete was taken, but the number of casualties was so high, in reality Hitler never used them again. It was typical Pyrrhic victory. Why even have a battle for Crete? Now in short, Romania had plenty of oil, which was important for the German army, especially for the tanks. So that had to be secured. Hitler wanted the Balkan flank secured. Diplomatically didn't work out, so Yugoslavia got invaded. In the meantime, Italy wasn't doing very well in Greece, so kinda on the way, Greece got invaded as well. Crete was still independent, but it is a very important place. From Crete, the British air forces could actually reach Romania and bomb the oil fields. And Hitler, wanting to attack the Soviet Union, could not permit that. So Crete had to be invaded as well. Now, what's the key here is this part, especially the place where we are now, Maleme. There's a little airfield here, maybe little, but this is the closest airfield to continental Greece. Once that is taken, then reinforcement can arrive. So that was the absolute key to Crete. And here, in much more detail still, here's the airfield. but it is in the hands of the Greek army still, so we cannot go down there and record anything. We're gonna go down to the little bridge here and to this point to hill 107. So here it is. This is the Malama Airport. Yes, that little piece of asphalt was the key to Crete. It is unbelievable how sometimes such little places have such immense strategic importance. So this is the famous Stavrounitis Bridge. Original, and in many respects, those holes that you see, it's not because the place is falling apart. I mean, it kind of is, but what you see, that's memory of the war. Those big holes, they're from the big German machine guns. They were shooting to the one side, and you're gonna see now the other side. Those were the holes left by the Allies, by the New Zealanders defending the Malama Airport. This bridge, although small, is one of the keys to understanding why, although the German soldiers were dying like flies, they still won. See, the General Freyberg, who was the chief in command of the Allied forces, was convinced that they are here only as a distraction. So basically, he was convinced, yep, they're here, but the real forces, they are going to come by sea. So most of his soldiers, and there were many, were not here. They were from the airport of Maleme all the way stretched out towards the city of Chania. This side of Stavrounitis was empty. On the other side, yes, there was a hill, there were some people, but not enough. So those paratroopers who had bad luck of being dropped somewhere else, they were dying like flies. But those that had the luck to fall somewhere here, they had time to actually reach the ground, then find cover, then look for arms that were also fallen down in separate boxes. They had time to assemble everything, for example, huge machine guns, and then they had time to attack. They took the bridge, they took the western side, and they were just 100 or 200 meters away from the airfield. So that's one of the keys to understanding why such a little bridge may be so important. We are now on top of hill 107, and from here I think it's best to understand the obsession of Freyberg with the naval invasion. You can perfectly see the stretch from the Malama Airport to Chania, to the port. So the artillery that was positioned on this hill was positioned towards the beaches because Freyberg was convinced this is going to be the place of the invasion. When it turned out that many soldiers are on the western side of the hill, the artillery was fixed and it was useless. So here is the highlight, I think, of the hill 107, a bunker. Actually, I don't know if it's the bunker of the Colonel Andrew who was in charge of the hill or not, but it's here. And actually, it's a bit of a disgrace. Such an interesting spot, such an important historical event, really, was the Battle of Crete. And look at it, it's a ruin. I don't know why they're waiting for it to fall, if it's such an important piece of the past and the history of this place. But here's the thing, all right? We think, of course, today of this amazing paratrooper invasion, but we have to remember a number of details. We keep focusing on, of course, the important bit, which is the paratroopers, but we tend to forget, of course, that aerial forces is not paratroopers only. Actually, not first of all. First of all, it's the planes, and with the planes come the bombs. And when it comes to the bombs, well, that's why the bunker is here. Of course, it's here to protect you from them, but there's something that it cannot protect you from, which is the psychological effect. The sound that the Stukas were making while bombing, of course, the bombing itself, day after day after day, it had huge psychological effect on the people here.
It would, of course, give you migraines eventually, or simply a nervous breakdown. And even if you're protected in a bunker like this, well, it's not going to protect you from the psychological effects. Plus, communications are down. Of course, they didn't have Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and so on. So you've got here the head of the hill. Now, he's cut off from his superiors. He's cut off from the part of his own people. So when the paratroopers started attacking from the west, from beyond Tavronitis, he asked for help. But how can he ask for help if there's no communication? Eventually, the messages went through. What he got was a no, because it's a distraction and the actual forces will come by sea for sure. And then no communication from the part of his army. And of course, all those days of bombardment, of course, including the very day of paratrooper invasion itself, it must have taken a very heavy toll on the man's head. So, in the end, Colonel Andrew decided night 20th to 21st to abandon his post. He was sure most of his people are dead and he knew there is no help coming from the east. And that wrong decision was one of the key elements as well, because turns out that most of his company was fighting and defending the airport. But when he decided to leave the post and leave the bunker, Germans entered, and that pretty much sealed the story of the Malama Airport. 21st of May, there is already an air bridge and reinforcements are coming. So this bunker, the hill, and the little bridge that we saw were key elements in taking the airfield, key elements of who wins and who loses the Battle of Crete. We've seen the bad guys. Now it's time for the good guys. See, the thing is, when you look at pure numbers, there were double or a bit more Allied soldiers than German soldiers. 35,000 Allied versus 14,000 of the Commonwealth. But you have Germans being elite paratroopers from several particular regiments with a bit of push-up by the infantry. 2 or 3 regiments were sent with them, with the paratroopers. So they had high morale and they acted as one pretty much. And here what you've got is complete disarray. That's why I did say Commonwealth. Obviously you are going to have British soldiers here. As you can see, a number of examples. But then again, not only British soldiers, plenty of them were from a completely different part of the world. So here you have, for example, New Zealand. So, you know, when you have the paratroopers sent from Germany, maybe they're not home, but they are brainwashed by, well, crazy, but an ideology that can pump you full of adrenaline. And here you've got people from Australia and New Zealand. What do they care about a completely different part of the world? I mean, that's not their home. Their home is like, what, 20,000 kilometers away. That's one thing. And secondly, what about their morale? It's very low. They have been defeated several times. When they came to Crete, that was after evacuation from mainland Greece. And that wasn't nice. They had to run. They literally had to leave behind their stuff. And I don't mean like armored vehicles or something. I mean actually their rifles. And some of them didn't even make it. The bay behind me was filled with ships, half or fully sank, because of course Luftwaffe wasn't sleeping. So yes, the numbers were in favor of the Allies, but in such cases morale is much more important, and the morale was much higher on the German side. Plus, many of those people were from different regiments, so when half the people are dead from one, half are dead from the other, you start merging them, but they don't know each other. Sometimes they're from different cultures or whatnot. So it was one big mess. And of course they lacked munitions, they lacked rifles, they lacked provisions, generally speaking. I'm not even mentioning, of course, the issue of air power, which was practically gone. It is still actually a bit of a miracle that they still managed to do what they have done. Especially, I think here we should mention the Maori. Now the Maori, they have a very, let's call it, bellic culture. War was an important part of their culture. And I guess we all heard of famous haka. If not, well, check it out on the internet. Today, usually you see it when the famous All Blacks New Zealand team plays rugby. And it's kind of it's cute and nice. It's an actual war dance, and it's not exactly just a issue that you see during rugby. There's a famous story that during already evacuation, one New Zealand regiment had to keep the flank guarded from a possible German attack, and the Germans came. One of the Maori privates stood up and in front of the Germans started dancing the haka. When the rest of his people saw it, New Zealanders, Australians, whoever was there, they got so animated, they just grabbed the knives, the rifles, whatever they had, and just shouting, they stormed the Germans and they pushed them away. If I remember right, in like 1 hour they killed 600 of them. So next time you see a haka, remember that story. That's an actual war dance. But it's also why it's the Maoris who suffered the most casualties. I think 2/3 of the Maori soldiers did not leave Crete alive. Our last stop is a little village called Askyfou, deep in the mountains in the center of Crete. And here is a little hidden gem, something officially called War Museum. What it actually is, it's a private collection of one family. For 70 years they've been collecting things, and they've got 3,000 items. When I say things, anything that they found connected to the Second World War. And one thing is to read about it. Another thing is to go to places connected with history. But yet another thing is just seeing it all in one little spot. And it's rather mind-blowing, I would say. That's pretty much everything, including a propeller from Stukas. It's completely crazy and mind-blowing. It is definitely the best way to finish the day for today.
The next morning, just one extra stop.
What you're seeing in front of you is the Chora Sfakion. It used to be supposedly a big town with 100 churches. Today, that's it. What you see in front of you, that's the whole town. I think there are more tourists than locals, 200-300 maybe. But we are here for two reasons, and about the first, let's talk now. And the Battle of Crete as such was waging mostly in the north, but the last accords were struck here in the south. After a week of battling, the Allied generals decided it's best to save people and send them to Egypt. In the end, the Suez Canal is there, which is very important. So what they did is they basically evacuated everybody they could, and mostly from here, from Chora Sfakion, they were sending to Egypt. Hence you've got the monument, hence you've got the flags, British, Australian and New Zealand flags. If I remember right, in the end only 2,000 soldiers died out of more than 30,000, which is few really when you think about the ferocity of the battles. Around 20,000 were saved, 10,000 could not get evacuated. Most of them fell into German hands and spent their time in prison, but many of them joined the Greek partisans. See, the thing is, there was one more flag here, of course, the Greek one. What about the Greek army? Ironically, they were not able to defend their own homeland. Most of the Greeks, including the ones from Crete, well, they were close to the border of Albania. When Italy invaded Greece, Greek army went to fight Italians. So when Germany entered mainland Greece, those guys got surrounded and they could not come and defend their own homeland. So there were in the end around 10,000 people, Greek people here defending Crete as well. But the most interesting story are not the army, but the civilians. And when it comes to their readiness for battle, we're going to talk about it soon, how it came to be that in the culture they are rather ferocious.
But that will have to wait till the next time. So for the moment, good night and to be continued.